Are we the baddies?
I drink your milkshake.
Hey, this is Box Office Baddies coming to you from a balcony in beautiful Koreatown, Los Angeles. My name is Sean.
My name's Nick, and today we have a very special guest. We have my friend Crow here. Everybody say hello.
Hello.
Woo! How's it going, man?
It's going great. Good to be here.
Yeah, a little bit about how me and Crow met. Like any good friendship, it started in a basement in Highland Park over some beers. Very LA. We started talking about movies and started talking about A24, and we were doing an A24 movie, this week, The Lighthouse, so we thought we'd invite you down, so thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, so you're a boom operator.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm a boom operator. For those who don't know what that is, I'm the person on film sets who holds the long pole with the fluffy microphone on it over the movie film actors so that you can hear what they're saying.
Hopefully you don't get
Nice.
it in the shot.
Preferably not, you know.
Yeah.
There are some boom operators who like really stake their self-worth on like how razor close they can get the boom to the frame without dipping in. That's not really my style personally. I have a more loose, kind of laid back style.
Nice.
But, it is what it is.
That's great. So are you from here?
Here being Los Angeles, no. I say I'm from Austin, Texas, because that's where I went to high school, and that's where I've spent the majority of the years of my life living. But I kind of moved around a lot as a kid.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I'm really excited that we get to talk today, and we're doing The Lighthouse today, one of Sean's favorite movies. A24, this is definitely his wheelhouse. You want to tee up the movie a little bit, Sean?
Well, yeah, so it's for sure my wheelhouse, sort of, but I wanted to add really quick that our boom operator guest today actually did some work on an A24 film, if you want to talk about that really quickly.
Yeah,
sure.
so it was actually like a really interesting sort of scenario. So I wasn't the main boom operator for the entire show. It was kind of an interesting sort of scenario where my twin brother Eric is a sound mixer, so we actually work together fairly often.
Okay.
And we got hired to do the final week on this movie called Minari. And so we got to come in and just kind of be like kind of the relief pitchers, so to speak. The other
sweet.
sound team was let go, and we were brought in to kind of just get through the very end of filming
Were you
with
cleaning
like
up a mess?
sort of higher morale. Yeah, kind of a little bit. I mean, I don't know the original sound team. We had never met them, but Oklahoma, it's funny. I am originally from Central Texas, and Oklahoma is kind of like a burgeoning film community. And so they just didn't have really like a huge like film industry prior to the last 5 to 10 years.
Sure.
It's with the film incentives that have come in, they've been kind of coming up. But the demands of super, super low budget but still like studio backed movies are very, very high.
Mid-fi, right?
Yeah, mid-fi. Of mid-fi movies, as you like to say, like A24, this was like a sub $1 million movie, but it's still got names in it. It's still, a very, very jam-packed schedule. And so you've got to be on your A game. You've got to be fast. You've got to be experienced. And, I guess the team that they had gotten at the beginning was maybe just a little bit greener than the demands of that movie required. And so we were brought in to just kind of like bring up the overall morale and like speed up the pace because they were a little behind. They needed to finish by this time.
Nice, yeah.
So it was really great for me and Eric because we just got to come in and be like, we're not doing this whole movie. We didn't really get our opportunity to give them like the full twin sound experience, but we're just going to come in, and our main job, beyond just getting the good sound, our job is to like just make sure everybody's like having a good time, feeling good, feeling okay about it. We're not slowing things down. We're just, we're not going to fight over like some things that if we had done the entire movie, we would have fought over, fought to get to be better sound. But, in this instance, we're like, we're going to do the best job we can within these bounds and just like be like pleasant to work with, pleasant to be around, everybody. We just want to bring up that overall set morale. And so it was kind of an interesting experience. But that movie was called Minari. It's coming out in December, I think.
Yeah,
All right.
you said the budget was under $1 million.
I think so.
Or
Don't
somewhere
quote
in
me
there?
on that. Is this like maybe it was barely a million
Well, it has such
or
good
2
reviews.
million. Yeah, I
So-
mean, it was a pretty scrappy movie, but like,
How do
it's
they
great.
do that? Because I don't work in the film industry or anything. So I don't.
Right. I mean, a lot of movies under $1 million, you would be surprised. I mean, one of the most successful, maybe the most successful movie of all time, Paranormal Activity, was made for like, I think under $100,000. I think it was made for something like $35,000.
Do you remember when people like thought that was real for a little bit? Like I remember
Right.
being in like 8th grade and my friend was like, "You know that shit's real, right?"
Yeah.
And I was just like so scared.
It's just like, it's our generation's The Blair Witch Project. It's so great. But
so
that movie made $300 million. Like,
Yeah.
how many
insane.
percentage like budget like over the if it was
In the box
$30 million
office,
$30,000 to make it and $300 million profit, like the spread on that, oh my God, those people are all filthy rich.
Yeah. They went from living like close to like Sunset Boulevard to like Beverly Hills in like a night. You know what I mean? Like
Where have those filmmakers gone since then? Have they done anything else other than the sequels, obviously, which they did like 12 of?
I don't know.
I don't know. They've made a lot of sequels though. They're all
Yeah.
fairly
There's like
successful.
it turns into like a Jaws thing where like they're unaffiliated and they're
Right,
just
yeah.
like
Now it's
like,
just fan
like,
fiction.
Wait, what is happening here?
but the studio will back it. You know, it's canon.
Yeah, totally.
Alrighty. So you guys want to get into the Lighthouse? Start talking
Yeah,
about
let's
that
do
for a
it.
bit?
Let's talk the Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I feel like speaking of sound, this one seemed like it was. To me, it seemed like it was one of like the key elements of the movie. I felt like, as like a whole, it sounded incredible. A lot of people compare it to like a harsh noise sort of soundtrack. Like there's very like sort of like static element to it. It's very textured.
9 Inch Nails vibes.
Yeah, for sure. Industrial.
Yeah, industrial butt rock.
No, but it's like there's like sort of a texture to it that kind of like really like follows the rest of like the film's endeavors as well. Like if you look at the cinematography, everything is in a nice like 35 millimeter like film grain, shot on lenses that are very old, dating back from like the early like 1900s that they use. And I think one of like the main details of this movie really is texture, you know, in like every like facet of the movie. And I think that's one of the things that made it so enjoyable to watch, for that matter.
Yeah, I really like the sound of the horn. That was one of the first things that stood out to me. Like they did almost like a static, like gained out, like peaking type of almost like feedback noise to the horn, which wouldn't even sound natural, but it works in a really cool way, you know.
Right, yeah, they did do a lot of interesting things with the sound and the texture of the sound, and going back to what you were saying about texture, yeah, I was talking to you a little earlier before we started the recording, and this movie did remind me a lot of this other movie I've seen called Stalker. It's a Tarkovsky movie.
One of my top 5s probably ever.
Yeah, similarly, texture. I remember walking out of the theater the first time I saw Stalker, and I was like, fuck that movie. I hate that movie.
Yeah,
I can
it's
say
so
fuck
easy.
on this podcast, right?
Of course, man.
Yes,
It's
awesome.
not for
Yeah,
kids.
fuck that movie.
Or
Like
it
I
can
was
be.
just like, oh, I hated it. There was just, and it was mostly because of the textures. Like I was watching it, and it was just like these like earth tones and these browns and like glass on the floor, and there's like all this texture in it, but it was like texture that made me feel really uncomfortable. And this one with the Lighthouse, it was similarly like a lot of textures, not as off-putting to me, thankfully, as Tarkovsky, but yeah, a lot of textures, a lot of really interesting sort of moodiness to it. Yeah, it was a very interesting movie. Can't say I loved it, to be honest, but you know, I liked it. I liked the prowess of it, you know. And this is something that I have to separate between, like, you know, I feel like in film criticism a lot, sometimes it gets kind of blurry, like the differentiation between like this was a skilled or unskilled movie to have been made versus I enjoyed watching it or didn't enjoy watching it. Like in this, The Lighthouse is a very, very skillfully made movie, like unmitigatedly skillfully made.
Yeah, and I think something that anyone can really take from the movie is that like every single aspect of it has something that someone can enjoy. You know,
Yeah.
like if you're like a huge sound nut, you know, like you'll like love just the crazy experimental sounds that they made within the film. If you love cinematography dating back to old films and you view it as like an homage to the film industry, then I think that you'll love it for that reason. If you love just watching like Robert Pattinson like actually be blacked out on stage and pissing himself on set, then you'll love that.
Oh yeah.
So
you know.
yeah, I think it's one of those movies that I personally love most of, because I'm a huge fan of Robert Eggers. That being his second work. The Witch was the first one.
Yeah, you liked The Witch.
I love The Witch. Maybe even more so than The Lighthouse. But I do like The Lighthouse. But that being said, I really think that everyone will find something in the film, even if they ultimately didn't like it. And I think that it'll be something that is like remembered well after viewing.
Oh, yeah. I think that The Lighthouse is definitely a movie that'll stay with you.
For sure.
Yeah, it felt like very self-aware the whole time that they're trying to refer back to, like, they have the shots of the that kind of black ocean. It felt like almost like Creature from the Black Lagoon-esque, and then they have all of the island shots, which kind of felt like old, like 1930s King Kong, like to me at least, like growing up the stuff that I saw. So even like the seagulls kind of had a Hitchcockian.
It's so
thing
funny
going
you
on.
should mention the seagulls. When I was watching it with my partner Bree, and like in the first maybe 10 minutes of the movie, there's a shot where they're kind of like walking up to the house for the first time, and like over a cliff, and then like up to this house for the first time, and there's like in both shots, one right after the next, there's these like seagulls in the top right of frame, like behind the house or like behind them on the cliff. And I just kind of look over to Bree, and I'm just like kind of jokingly like, man, their seagull wrangler on this movie was fucking awesome. Like, I need to get this guy's name. Like, if I ever need to wrangle some seagulls. And then we keep watching the movie, and there's like some shots where they must have had a seagull wrangler.
They
like
do.
They're like pecking on the window and stuff. I was like, I was joking before about the seagull wrangler, but like they have a seagull wrangler.
Well, this is something that like Robert Eggers has done on his previous film, The Witch. On The Witch, they had like this goat that was on set that was named Black Phillip, and I remember watching like post interviews with Robert Eggers and him talking about how controlling this goat in like while they were shooting the film was like incredibly hard to do, and like of course he's an animal, so
he's a goat.
He wouldn't follow directions.
He doesn't know he's trying. He's supposed to be playing the devil in front of this camera. He's
It's
just
crazy.
a goat. He's just living his life.
He's like not even union. You know?
that-
not
I'm
even
hungry.
union, not getting paid.
Very hungry.
Yeah.
He's like a British little guy.
Yeah. Good bit. Nice.
Good.
But yeah, so it's I think it's something that maybe we'll see more in the future from Robert Eggers. He likes using kind of things a little bit out of his control to make the movie seem like more legitimate from like a mythological sort of side, you know? Like the seagulls were brought in by a trainer, and they had I guess like seagulls are very like sensitive like about their wings, so anything that kind of throws them off, like they want to like back up. And so like the whole film they had to like toss food out and then like have the crew set and be like, all right, go, like we have to get this done. So it's like I feel like it's probably one of those things where they had so many like ridiculous seagull takes just to get the actual thing done, and that's really hilarious to me. What do you guys think about the seagulls in terms of their meaning within the film? Like, what do they foreshadow, and what does that mean to you?
Well, there is the scene, just like to start at the surface level, there's the scene where Willem Dafoe kind of suggests that the seagulls contain the souls of like sailors that have been lost at sea or dead sailors or
I
things.
missed that
And
one.
so to kill a seagull is like sort of in essence disrespectful of sailor culture in general, like disrespectful of sailors. And so that makes sense to kind of at least sort of establish the relationship between Willem Dafoe's character and Robert Pattinson's character, because Tom Wick is like an old sailor guy. That's at least what he's establishing. You know, it gets kind of muddy toward the end where they're sort of gaslighting each other and we don't really know who they are at all.
Yeah.
But he's sort of this old sailor guy, been doing it his whole life, versus, Robert Pattinson's character is just like, he was a logger before that. He was God knows what. He's tried a lot of things. He's not like ingrained in this sailor culture. He's just doing this for the paycheck.
Well, yeah. Also, he's not even who he said he was in the beginning.
Right.
You know,
he's not.
He's a farce. He's
If
stolen
from
identity.
whatever. Yeah, he's a stolen identity thing. Yeah.
And so it's that is really funny to me because like both characters are very lost from like the get-go. You know, you don't know like tons about the background behind Willem Dafoe's character, but you know he's just kind of like this lost guy. Been doing a job for a long time, been stuck on this island like in isolation. And Robert Pattinson's character comes in and he is lost, and he also stole an identity. And I think like bringing it back to the seagulls, to me it really felt like they were sort of like the first thing that was like poking and prodding like the sanity of the people on the island. And I think like once that was tested and Robert Pattinson actually kills the seagull in a brutal fashion, I think that kind of always leads you back to the light, meaning like this, like the central focus of the lighthouse, like the all-knowing, all-powerful light that really keeps the characters wanting to go to it constantly. And I think that like their impulsion to want to go do that is like where they went wrong throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Where they went wrong, like for the characters or like for the filmmaker?
Well, for the actual characters of the movie, I'm saying it's
gotcha.
just
In
like,
the story, in the world of the movie, that's where they went wrong.
To me, I see it as like two men who are just like, extremely lost within themselves, and they see this light as like this fixture of like all knowledge, and they're obsessed with it, and they want to get up there, and you know, like by the end of it, it's the thing that destroyed them. You know, maybe they gained too much knowledge, or like their curiosity killed them, but it's like something about the enchantment of the light was like very, very sketchy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely a lot left to the up to the interpretation of the audience in this movie.
Yeah.
There's so much. Like they set it up so that clearly so many aspects of this movie are able to be sort of construed as metaphorical or
Totally.
like allegorical or something like that, but it really does not direct the audience toward any one specific answer.
No.
You know, we don't know if, you know, the degree to which either of these guys are bullshitting each other. We don't know, you know, what necessarily the light symbolizes or what the seagulls symbolize. We don't even know, like, when Robert Pattinson's character is beating up Willem Dafoe's character and he sees this other man.
Yeah.
Is that other man the man that he let die in the logging camp that he
I
told
think
the
so.
story about? Is it his father? Is it like somebody else? Like, we don't really know. I mean, maybe that seems the most logical answer. Is this like other guy that he let die, you know, in a log like falling logs or whatever?
Yeah.
But we don't really know. It's kind of left up to your interpretation, as is a lot of the things in this movie.
This is something I wanted to ask Nick about, because I know like the whole like theme of the podcast is basically like me coming with like some like snobby sort of artsy movies, and like you loving just like sheer entertainment value of movies, which I enjoy as well. But I wanted to ask you what you thought specifically about like the open-endedness of the film, and just also like that technique in filmmaking in general. Does that piss you off a little bit?
I like the movie in general, I would say, but I think the thing for me that was the hardest was how subtle the dialogue is for like conveying really important plot points. So like I would tune out like just looking at a shot, kind of the composition,
Yeah.
And then I would miss something, and Sean would be like, "Oh, this is important." And if he wasn't there, I like what you guys said the last 3 minutes, I kind of just blacked out. Like like when you guys were getting all in like the minutia of the plot, I didn't get any of that.
And that's funny. I mean, that's how I felt when I was watching The Witch. Like, it was really hard. Like, they, similar to this movie, that in The Witch, they kind of speak in this, like, old sort of puritanical speak. But it's not over the top and Shakespearean and in iambic pentameter to where you can, like, follow it. It's just so organic. Like, this is the way they talked in 1630 or whatever it is. And you kind of miss it just because the patterns of speech that they're using so organically and so effortlessly, you know, got to shout it out, probably did a lot of rehearsals for that, which not a whole lot of movies do, I guess, nowadays.
Nope.
So bravo, Eggers. But yeah, it's really easy to miss stuff because, you know, being unfamiliar with these speech patterns and this diction and things like that, you just kind of tune it out. It's just, you're like, okay, well, this information isn't pertinent to me because I'm not going to be able to comprehend it. But, like, if you pay attention, you can. It's just, like, really tough, you know? And you have to be at least somewhat familiar in this movie with, like, the sort of sailory vibe, you know? It's like, well, if you kind of think about that, it's like they're really deeply steeped in this aesthetic. And if you can kind of put yourself there, then all the words kind of make sense. But you have to get past that sort of, like, passive viewership sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the part, like, when it opened, I kind of had a moment right when the movie opened where it opens in like 4:3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's black and white, and I'm just like, if this thing's in a foreign language, I'm walking out of the room. Like that's like the 4 of 4. Where for me, it's so hard to keep. It's just because it's not because I have a problem with foreign language films. I just end up reading the subtitles the whole time, and I get really distracted because I think I just have such bad.
Nick's just a big nationalist.
No, I just have bad ADD. So like I was saying, it's like I'll get distracted by the composition of a shot and I miss a dialogue point. And
I
the
feel
next
that.
10 minutes are irrelevant. I'm like, what's happening?
I'm sure most viewers of The Lighthouse probably could have stood to benefit from some closed captioning.
Yeah.
But I feel the same way. Like when I watch a lot of anime and Japanese movies and things, and so I like to watch those kind of movies in the original Japanese because that's like what it was made. But I do feel like sometimes it does well to watch a movie in English just so that you can focus on the composition, focus on the frame, focus on what's in front of you, and not be missing some really nice subtle things, but because you're just looking at the bottom fifth of the frame the whole time.
Well, it's actually really interesting that you guys bring that up. Also, first, Nick, I actually believed it was a 4:3 in the beginning as well, but it's 1:19:1.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
wow.
which is even almost a little bit more of a square.
You probably haven't heard of this aspect
But-
ratio before. It's really obscure.
That is the most hip thing I've ever heard. It's like 22.7 and a third dimension.
It wouldn't actually fit on a 1991 television.
There's like a couple exponents on the end of it. Like
It probably had to do with because they were shooting with that old film, right? Or like I said, probably was in a weird like frame
They had a
size.
just kind of an
strange
homage
stock,
to like the boxiness of like actual like old movies, and they wanted it was also like lends itself to the claustrophobic feeling you feel with these two sailors trapped on this island. Just classic film technique. But one thing, since you guys were talking about the sound, I wanted to talk about was Robert Eggers is like prides himself on this movie also with The Witch, and I assume movies in the future he's going to do it as well. But he's very much interested in not only getting dialects of or just like accents of certain people, but he loves like regional dialects like very specifically. Like he'll do research about like this part of like New England or something where like the Puritans have come over, like in The Witch or something. And then there's these people working on a lighthouse, and I can't even tell you exactly really what the dialect is, but it's not random. It's all very calculated. He has the actors, which need to be the best of the best as character actors, to train for these specific sort of dialects that they do. And I just love the attention to detail, not only just in the dialects that he chooses, but also I feel like there's not really much room in a Robert Eggers movie for improv in like a lot of ways. Everything seems like very tight knit, but in like the best sort of possible way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think maybe the only part that lends itself to a little bit of improv is I think he really lets his characters that he hires sort of interpret the script the way they want to when they say it, right? It's like you say the line, but like the way you perform it is like up to you. Like specifically, I wanted to ask you guys about how you felt about the drunken scenes, where they're dancing and they're singing like the tailor or the sailor sort of tales and like songs and all that kind of stuff. And it really gets like out of control, and there's no way that it was like written more than just like a few words for a few things that they say, but like the way that like Pattinson like rehearsed for it, the way like Defoe sort of like rehearsed for it, and the way they say it is like a totally different thing. So I think that that's like one of the main parts where they actually leave a little improvisation to the actual people in the movie. So what do you guys think about that specifically?
I think that's probably why the movie worked well, because I felt like that was supposed to be the climax of the movie, when they were like totally drunk, like battling each other, other than kind of that like ending scene where it kind of shocks you. But everything felt really scripted into the T, like you were saying, to that point. But
Yeah.
it was nice that it kind of took off into like the more they drank, the more it descended into the madness. But I really like the most that they did, like the first 30 minutes of the movie is like 4 weeks, but then the last hour and a half is like one or it's a few days, right?
But you don't really know, right? The time.
Yeah, that's the whole.
You don't. Yeah, they don't really specify how long they've been on
Could
the
have been
island.
like months and months. You have no idea. You know what I mean? It could be. I mean, it's probably not a year, but like who knows? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Also left up to interpretation. Yeah, I found myself thinking about quite a few things during, like, while I was watching those kinds of scenes. Like, part of me was thinking about, well, this is an age before mass communication, like largely before people had telephones, let alone the internet or anything like that, you know. And so it was interesting to me how organic it felt with them kind of sliding into these pastimes as they got drunk, like singing and dancing and doing all these things were kind of just like pastimes, you know. They're just like a thing to do to pass the time, you know, as good as playing video games. Like there was a scene where they're like dancing around and doing things, and then it cuts to them slow dancing. I'm like, I look over
right?
at, yeah, they almost
Yeah, that
kiss,
was
and then
crazy.
they fight.
That was
and,
wild.
and I look over at Brie, and I'm like, they're having like an entire like the kind I just thought of, like, you know, in those like 1940s movies when the soldiers are about to go off to war, so they have this like big like city dance with the soldiers and the women, and they all like, I'm like, they had that whole experience just here in their living room, like just the two of them, you know. They just kind of like imagined it, but like that's basically what they're doing. And I thought about that a lot, and like just like the lack of, like, the lower population of the globe, the lack of people, the lack of interconnectedness, and just kind of what is born out of that sort of stillness.
Yeah.
And then I also thought about, like, the possibility that this whole entire movie, The Lighthouse, could be a story that, like, some old sailor guy is telling in, like, a New England town to, like, just some normal, like, Boston metropolitan guy.
Yeah.
And, like, just thinking about how some of these aspects of the movie could be just kind of setting the sort of real world aspect of the story, like the fact that they're dancing, they're drinking, they're doing these things, they're like repairing the shingles on the thing. It sets it up so that when the storyteller in this like hypothetical dream world that I'm like thinking about is getting to the point where he's talking about, you know, the more esoteric things like the light and the energy of the light, and why this guy wants to get up to the light and the other guy won't let him get there, you know, like it makes the story that much more engaging.
And I think that kind of lends itself to some of the inspirations for this movie. One of them, well, first off being Edgar Allan Poe. One of
Okay,
his
yeah.
last works that he wrote was actually an unfinished work about a lighthouse and about sailors' insanity, like on this like lighthouse sort of like island.
I'll
and-
bite.
You'll bite. Also, on top of that, it's also based on H.P. Lovecraft, and it's really based on his sort of sense of like cosmic horror and the idea of the light driving sort of like this character study to like this sort of cosmic energy, and like them being entranced by it to the point where they are almost really willing to risk it all. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that reminds me of another movie that I worked on. It was called The Vast of Night, that has the same sort of...
Did you work on that?
I did.
No shit.
I boom operated that.
I loved
me
that.
And my brother and I boom operated that.
That was
I
great
boom
low
operated.
budget, dude.
He mixed it. Yeah, it was great. It was 3 weeks of all overnights in Central Texas. It was crazy. I love that movie. I have like a lot of pride for that movie.
Super underrated, guys.
Yeah.
Go on Amazon Prime and
Watch
go
it.
check out The Vast of Night. Really, really good. Lower budget, but very well done sci-fi.
Yeah, but I think it has this similar like kind of drawing in of like the supernatural or of like this sort of, like you were saying, this kind of Lovecraftian cosmic thing, like
Yes.
this draw of the in Vast of Night, it's the aliens, it's the call of this like weird tone, but
Yeah.
in this it's the light, it's the, you know, the energy of the seagulls, the you know, the messages of the sea after he kills the seagull, and, you know, things like that.
Doesn't that kind of like lend itself to Tarkovsky in and of itself, right? Because like if you look at have you ever seen Solaris?
I have not.
Okay, so I won't get into it, but it basically, instead of, it's sort of like a Russian interpretation of sci-fi, whereas like the West loves to talk about actual contact between humans and aliens. The Russian side of it was more sort of, what is the philosophy behind like even experiencing any sort of other life? You know what I mean? It's not about like the contact. It's about like, how does that like reconcile with our like, just like our being, you know? Like how do we react to that?
What does that mean for us?
Exactly. And so the whole sort of like cosmic thing where it's like unsure what it is, but it's kind of like a ever-present thing is, if you look in Solaris, there's this thing where you don't even find out that there's physical aliens. It's this planet that they're surrounding, it's like the ocean and just like the power of the planet like is radiating these like hallucinations and these crazy things towards its subjects. You know what I mean? And it's I like the idea of like taking something that's not necessarily like a human form, but it still like entrances you into something that you don't really understand. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting thought.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Nick?
I'm thinking that I'm just looking at my notes here. I think that one of my favorite parts of the movie was that the farther what you got into it, like the more you lost the linear sense of time. You know, like you're kind of descending in the beginning to, it feels like almost in the dialogue there's like mark points along the way where they're like, it's 1 week, it's 2 weeks, it's 3 weeks, and then they're kind of at the end of that initial thing. And then once you get to that, I think that's 30 minutes, 40 minutes in when they get to that end of that first month. And then from there, you have no idea how long they're there.
You're only halfway through the movie when they realize no one's coming for them.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like, oh, wait, we still have half a movie. Oh, man, I don't know what
I clicked
they're
up
gonna
on
do.
the Roku button and I was like, wow, we got an hour left of this thing. All right.
It's like, oh, man, we thought we had a timeline. Now we
I was
do
like,
not.
let's wrap this thing up.
I thought you were pretty bored at one sec, Nick. Like I remember at one point, like, you know when people do that thing when they're bored where they're sitting in front of the TV with you and then they click like the up button on the remote just to see the time that's left. Like I saw you do that and I was like, oh fuck, he hates it.
Well, no. I didn't hate it, but I was just seeing like, I was like, sometimes when you're watching a movie, it's so slow that like 30 minutes will feel like 5 minutes, and sometimes an hour will feel like 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I was like, how is this feeling right now? It wasn't because I hated it. I would say overall I really liked it, but I think that like they could have made that a 45-minute TV special. You know what I mean? Like, and I could, because for what I was looking for, which was just like because I could hardly pick up what was going on throughout the whole movie, honestly.
Right.
So I was just enjoying it for like those shots of the ocean at night were so cool.
Yeah, those were really cool.
The ones that were like super exposed, like super bright of the like it was like cobblestone in the actual lighthouse itself during the day when Pattinson was doing all those menial tasks around, you know, and like those pans across. I thought they were really well done, but it was just hard for me to keep up with what was going on. I think the more you watch the movies, the more it's easy to understand what's going on, and I don't think I've seen enough of like that kind of thing to just be like, this is what's happening.
And I mean, the entertainment value, I feel like, of something like this is kind of twofold. It's one is like, it's so deeply steeped in this aesthetic, and the question really you have to ask yourself as an audience member is like, do you want to hang out in 1890s kind of drunkard sailor vibes for an hour and a half? With The Witch, it's like, do you want to hang out with some Puritans for an hour and a half? Like, for me, I don't want to hang out with Puritans. Like, I thought it was really cool what they went, like what Eggers was going for. I was like, bravo, you made like a really interesting stage play, but like on film. But do I like Puritan stories or like want to hang out in that vibe that's very kind of like very kind of guided by like sort of puritanical Christian imagery and
don't
things
go to
like
the
that?
deep south then.
No, I do not. No, I do not want to hang out there. So, like, would I watch The Witch again? No. Am I glad I watched it? Yes. Would I watch this one again? Probably not. Am I glad I watched it? Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening today. It was really great to talk with Crow today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
you're welcome
man.
back anytime, brother. And
Awesome.
we'll keep it going, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, remember, upcoming movie by him that he basically wrapped up. Check out Minari, that's coming up by A24 soon. Also, again, check out Vast of Night on Amazon Prime.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
See ya.